Hi everybody and welcome to this week's edition of Straight Talk, sponsored by Inglis and Darley. My name's Bren O'Brien and joining me as per usual is Tim Rowe. This week, racing reform is back in focus as change the New South Wales industry heads to Parliament and New Zealand embarks on a sweeping shake-up of its own governance structures. In Bren and Bloodstock, we look back at Stallion Parade weekend in the Hunter Valley. Andy Makiv joins us to discuss all things Godolphin and Darley, while Arrowfield's John Messara reflects on a turbulent few weeks involving Morris, Van Dijk and Autumn Glow. And we'll look at the record-setting Inglis Ready To Race catalogue and what it says about demand across the market for breezed-up horses. In wagering, we assess Tabcorp's latest signs of recovery, the impact of Australia's new gambling laws and offshore threat. The bookmakers say is growing. Tim, let's start with racing reform, where uncertainty remains the dividing theme. Both sides of the tableau. We'll start off with, events in New South Wales Parliament yesterday. Now, you and I both know that there's some stuff we can't necessarily talk about here because there was stuff that was initially raised in Parliament, which those watching the live stream would have seen, which has subsequently have been removed from the record around adverse mentions. And what we can talk is broader terms about what it was talked about. It was about, racing New South Wales. It was to do with racing New South Wales, and it was to do about whether some of the evidence in previous inquiries may have actually constituted possibly a misleading of Parliament. Now, we can't go into more detail than that. We don't want to because, to be perfectly honest, it's, you or I don't want to sit here on the wrong side of a parliamentary contempt hearing or anything like that. So we'll skirt around the edges of that. But it does really highlight some of the, potentially difficult, the difficult nature of racing politics. It was all in the context of Racing Minister David Harris turning up to budget estimates yesterday, which are usually pretty ho-hum sort of affairs. But he certainly wore a few short balls in our cricket parlance in terms of trying to get around it, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I didn't watch it as extensively as you, Brennan, and Warwick. Colleague did a good job covering that, and he, sort of from the first over to the end, if we use the last ball, if we're talking about cricket, it was certainly, he had to duck a few bounces there. There was, as expected, there just because of some angst around the Rose Hill and Racing New South Wales, the Racing Minister, and then the release of or non-release at the moment of the thoroughbred review of the Thoroughbred Racing Act, the Hazard review. He had to try and defend the government's action or inaction on that.
Yeah, I guess if you want to see your public money well spent, don't go back and look at the live stream of that event because it felt like more a Year 10 high school classroom than it felt like the halls of Parliament. But that's just the nature of it, I guess. I guess what's playing out here is more broadly the sort of battle of control of what New South Wales racing looks like. Scrutiny over racing New South Wales, the Hazard review we've covered in depth on this podcast and over the site. Like, there's a lot of things at play here. Look, there's a broader argument here that when racing and politics mix, and we've said this before with the wagering stuff a couple of weeks ago, Tim, racing is rarely the winner. And I think out of yesterday, there wasn't a lot of clarity around that. I guess it does show that this is an issue that has political capital, and those seeking reform, are doing well in order to sort of extract that political capital.
I could be wrong just the way I interpreted yesterday, but Minister Harris said that the review recommendations or the review report will be, go before Cabinet. So I'm guessing the government will determine what action, if any, they will take, of those recommendations, whether they accept those recommendations, reject some, and then probably come up with a PR strategy behind that if they do reject some or, the controversial actions. And that's, I'm guessing, why they're not releasing it at the moment, is because they want to get their ducks in order. And it is a political hotbed racing and just with the personalities involved. And I guess just throwing it all out there politically, obviously they don't see that as beneficial to the Labor government at the moment.
Yeah, and I think probably there's a sense that David Harris himself wants to make it a government decision, not a him decision. But you're right, Tim. I think that there is a sense that if they release the report and then, say, 2 or 3 weeks later, go back with what they're going to do, there will be a vacuum for the feedback to sort of flow in and, probably possibly from their perspective, make the issue harder to sell from a political point of view. I do think that they are seriously considering separating the commercial and regulatory functions of Racing New South Wales. There was a couple of, I think 3 or 4 times yesterday where David Harris mentioned those two aspects and how it made it so complex. That indicates to me that they're thinking about that. That would be significant. Would be the biggest change in sort of Racing New South Wales' structure probably since the Act came in the 1990s. So it is a significant moment. We'll continue to give it coverage where we can, where we're not sort of redacted and whatever else. It was quite a bizarre day yesterday, but we covered what we could cover out of it. We think it's important stuff to cover, and we do our best. And beyond that, Tim, I don't know if you want to sort of step into New Zealand's probably an area that you've covered a fair bit of. And obviously there was a fair bit came out late last week after we recorded the podcast. I think it was last Friday. We were working our way back from Whitton to Yarraman, and there was a lot of discussion with the Kiwis who were staying within the place we had the accommodation with about what this latest development in the New Zealand scene actually means for the future of New Zealand racing and the way things are structured over there.
Yeah, as expected, obviously, Mick Kieran foreshadowed what was likely to happen. Probably might have happened a few days earlier than even he perhaps expected. But they've established the establishment board of effectively another committee or advisory group to lead. Well, try and determine what the next steps should be in terms of restructuring and the governance and how both codes of racing, harness racing and thoroughbred racing in New Zealand should be run. Now, the way I interpret it again is that there's representatives from the TAB New Zealand Advisory Committee led by, Sir Peter Vella chairs that committee, and then representatives from both thoroughbred racing or NZ thoroughbred racing and harness racing NZ as well. But I think the PRAs or the bodies still have oversight and can rule on what actually decisions happen. That hopefully this is another step in the right direction where decisions are actually made. Again, at the end of the day, whether you agree or disagree which direction they're going, a decision has to be made. And as Mick Kieran suggested last week, you just can't keep going around in circles. Nothing will happen. And another 5 years we'll have another report or Messara-style report suggesting this or that should happen when it should have been done 5 years ago, and it should have probably been done 8 years ago as it was.
Yeah, it's just it's a bit of a vexing issue. I do urge people to go back and listen through that Mick Kieran interview. I thought it was very, even from our point of view, Tim. Well, obviously we sort of cover it as best we can from over here, and we know a fair few of the figures involved, and we talk to. I know you in particular have talked to a lot of people in this space, but the actual view from on the ground over there is, I mean, this is a period of change. And I think if you mirror it back to the New South Wales stuff, I think racing has to evolve and change all the time. If it doesn't do that, it gets to these crisis moments and suddenly you sit there and go, oh, hang on, we're running out of money or our model's broken or whatever else it is, or our governance systems are broken. You have to address those things. So I think it's really important from a racing perspective around that stuff. The other aspect I wanted to touch on from a story early on this week, or quite a sad story actually, about the death of Marina Morel in a track work accident a few years ago now. I think it was 5 years ago now. The coroner's handed down their findings around that. There are some sort of ramifications for the racing industry around recommendations of how injured horses return to training, and also currently sort of 150-day review. I think if a horse has run for 150 days, it has a sort of review period. There was some discussion that may be reduced to 60 days, which would be interesting because I think it would cover a lot more horses. And as we know, there's no lack of desire to commit to welfare in the racing industry. The challenge is just having the resources to do that. So there will be some implications out of that one. I think there's some national implications far beyond New South Wales. And when we have these tragedies happen, it's really important that racing reflects on the ways it can do better. Neither the trainer who was involved, Brett Thompson, or Racing New South Wales were found to have contributed any way or form to that tragic situation. There was a whole bunch of evidence around that. You can look through the article earlier this week, but I think it does highlight, Tim, that we work in a very dangerous industry, and the protection of our workers is first and foremost, and the protection of their equine athletes as well as part of that. The following announcement is brought to you by Darley. You only have to look at the names: Dubai Millennium, Dubawi, Too Darn Hot, Broadsiding, Night of Thunder, Ombudsman, and Gayath. It's a line that keeps moving the breed forward. And now there's Observer, a Group 1 Australian Guineas winner and a Group 1 Victoria Derby winner. The next generation of the Dubawi dynasty, standing this season at Darley. Tim, on to Bren and bloodstock now, and really interesting. Matty Timms, who was our esteemed driver and company throughout the weekend, counted 70 stallions. We went and saw across 8 farms. It was a very busy weekend across the 3 days in the Hunter Valley. But look, I think by the time I saw the last stallion run around, my brain was a bit foggy. But it is important to be in that space, and it sort of, I guess, it restated to me the importance of the farms and how they work and these amazing facilities. I mean, if everyone have a look at you and I's thoughts, there's a 5-minute YouTube video out there. You can have a look at our precise thoughts, but it definitely felt like a worthwhile exercise from our perspective, and not just from a, I guess, editorial point of view, but getting a broader understanding of the industry, Tim.
Well, going to those properties, they're highly capitalised properties with infrastructure, and sort of I estimated very quickly with those 70+ stallions that, they'd be worth over $1 billion just in the horse flesh alone, let alone the properties. It's huge investment that these stud masters and breeders and everyone undertakes to run a stallion farm. It's quite remarkable, really, how stunning some of those are. We all got the chance to go on to Sedge and Ho. I hadn't been on there before, and I know you hadn't, Bren. That was very good of Mr. Zhang to let everyone sort of a back entrance to drive right through the farm, and it was great to see, why it has been such a good farm over a long period of time. Obviously, Kevin Mulady selling it to Yulong and Mr. Zhang in April. So, and they had four nice stallions there that I'm sure will be well patronised.
Yeah, it was certainly felt like a start of something there, not the actual journey will continue for Yulong. I'm no property valuation. I'll leave that to our good friends Donovan and Clint Donovan and Co to work that out. But I don't know, if he paid $40 million for that farm, it felt like a bit of a steal to me. So, it looks like it's an amazing property. It's bigger than I thought, actually. And I mean, I guess the way we came in might have been the case. But across the Hunter Valley, like, there was a bit of rain there on the Friday night, but it's farmers, they always need more rain. They always say that, but it did certainly feel like there was a sense of greenness or verdancy around the valley. And I thought that was it was good. And I thought it is really important. There's a lot of people moving in and out. We'll chat with Andy Makiv in a minute, but Andy Makiv raised the fact that maybe there are a few tie kickers there. Whether we fit into that mold or not, I don't know. But I think it's important because it is a showcase for the industry. It is a showcase for people to come in and have a look and get an idea about what it looks like, how the product's made. I think it's really important, and it's such a it's an exciting time of the year. We didn't touch on it before, but we got Group 1 racing. The Wink Stakes was run not long after we came to the Stallion Parade. We went and watched that in the Scone RSL, and there was a real sense around that it springs on its way. It's only a week away now. The breeding season's on its way. Foals are already on the ground. At this time of year, where sort of optimism really starts to pick up in the racing industry, doesn't it? And the breeding industry too.
Yeah, and we it was not just the big breeders there, and yes, we were. We are probably tie kickers, but we met.
At least you've bred one, Tim. At least you've bred one. I've never bred one, so you're a step ahead of me in that regard.
No, there was small breeders there with people with 2 and 3 mares and 1 mare. Lovely woman from Parks that we from Forbes that we met, and all over the place. Southern Highlands, all these people driving around. So I think it probably epitomises the industry that it is. For obviously a certain amount of wealth to be able to breed horses, but it did cover the whole spectrum of the industry, I thought, and well done to the farms for putting it on, because it wouldn't be a cheap exercise to run.
No, and I think they've probably got a bit more efficient at doing that. But I thought it was really interesting, and it's just also good to talk to people about where things sit with the industry, because there's a lot going on at the moment. Obviously, a lot of questions for us, Tim, like around about the wagering stuff and all that sort of stuff. So we try our best to provide people with the details we can, but we had a lot of questions going back, and and 2 of the people we talked to, we'll sort of roll them, not necessarily back to back here, but Andy Makiv, obviously been in charge, managing director at Godolphin Australia for a couple of years now, and sort of really obviously been a transition for them on the track with the way that they're working on things, but also an exciting time for them in terms of their stallions as well too, Tim. So it was really good to catch up with Andy, and here's what he had to say we caught up with him on Saturday. And joining us now on Straight Talk is Godolphin Australia Managing Director Andy Makiv. We're at the Stallion Parade here in the Hunter Valley. It's been a really good day, Andy. You must be really pleased with, I guess, the enthusiasm for what Darley's putting forward, and you guys are in a relatively good position. You've got good horses coming through. You've got horses at the very top as well. It must be a good sort of vibe around the place at the moment.
Yeah, really exciting. Our stallions presented beautifully today. They're the who's who of racehorses, really, in recent times. Horses like Animo, extraordinary racehorse, probably the best racehorse that anyone will see in the Hunter Valley this week. So great to showcase him again. He's got great stock coming through. Really exciting time for him. About to have 2-year-olds. Horse like Too Darn Hot returns from the UK, standing at 275,000. So amazing stallion. His best son, broadsidings here as well. Horses like Pinatubo, Traffic Warden, and of course the new horse Tentaris. So it's an embarrassment of riches, really. Very proud of the roster we've put together, and really happy that our clients are here today to see the horses, and looking forward to a great season.
There's always an expectation around first season dollars, and Tentaris steps out today, and there's a bit of an ooh and ah and looking at him and all that sort of stuff. But obviously an absolutely fabulous racehorse, an elite level sprinter. I mean, you must be really pleased with the way sort of he's been received, because when you have one like him, you don't get them come along all the time, do you?
No, if you call a horse like Animal once in a 20-year horse, he's at least a once in a 10-year horse. They're very hard to find, those really elite level horses. He was able to do it. Coolmore's an amazing race to win. It's the race to win with a 3-year-old colt, and then to do it away for age in the autumn as well. There wasn't much left for him to do. That's the reality. So the lure of stud's big. We're in the stallion business trying to create stallions for the future, and he just ticks every box to start that part of his journey. So very popular horse. We announced him at what we thought was a good, solid cleared 88,000, including GST, and we could have stood him for 100, 120. We've knocked mares back every day. We're not going to overtax him. We've only booked 130 mares to him. He's obviously only a young horse still, so we're going to look after him. And the next part of his journey, and hopefully he's continues the street cry sire line like Street Boss and the Animos and the Traffic Wardens as well. So exciting time.
And those that couldn't get into Tentaris, well, in my view, probably should look at Traffic Warden. The way he's another season under his belt looked pretty good today, I thought.
Yeah, beautiful physical. Always was. Delightful looking horse, got great strength. Him and Broadsiding, when they walked into a mounting yard in a race like the Golden Rose, Saddlecloth 1, Saddlecloth 2, it was like, wow, someone said to me, who happens to run a stud down the road, said to me, oh, expensive mounting yard. They walked in and just stole the show. They cornellaed the race. There wasn't, I think Traffic Wardens, we don't often stand horses that haven't won a Group 1 level, but he was one that we were very committed to. We thought he was always a Group 1 horse. His size when in Melbourne was dominant. I thought he was a touch unlucky in the slipper. It was heads up, heads down. I couldn't tell if he won or lost in the size. And then he took all of broadsiding to nail it in the Golden Rose. So he's a Group 1 colt all day long. Very well priced, great physical, great family. Out of an Exceed mare, St. Cross. He's going to have to do it a little bit harder than a horse like Tentaris, because they don't get that flood of elite level mares. But if they're good enough, they make it. And, he's certainly a Group 1 horse in every way other than the record, so happy to stand him.
When obviously you guys have got the fabulous range of brood mares to send to these stallions, but in terms of the outside interest and where things at this year, do you feel like there is that sort of, that strength and depth of breeders willing to send your horses your way and give you that support? Because that's a really key part of what you guys do too, isn't it? Obviously you'd love to have that homebred success, but success from your breeders is an enormous thing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I made the point today that extraordinarily Darley-side horses won 83 stakes races last season, which is amazing. 58 of them were bred by our clients. So we're good at it, but they're good at it too. And our stallions are obviously very good stallions. So, the lineup where we can access them from all around the world. We've got obviously horses coming from Europe. Street Boss is an American horse. Maybe a horse like Sovereignty comes next year, who knows. But, we can access horses being the only Darley farm in the Southern Hemisphere. So we can really provide quite a unique bloodline for everyone. But we're good at it. Which has been great, but it's run by our stallions. Our stallions drive that success, and it's quite an honour and a privilege to be able to breed to these horses and keep everything going. And so many of the stories you see today, or the horses that walk out, are sons of and grandsons of other horses that walked on this lawn. So it's a thing that keeps on giving for us.
The Stallion Parade weekend overall, year-long launch today at Sedge and Ho, and it's become such a big event, not just for clients, but it's an industry event.
Yeah, it is. It's it's a massive weekend. I wonder if there's any people at the races today because they're all here in the Hunter Valley. So it is amazing that it's the start of the spring, effectively, although we're still in winter. That the blossoms are about to come out on trees, the sun's shining. It's a lovely part of the world this time of year. So great to see so many people. It's great for the sport, great for breeding. It's probably a mini national thoroughbred week in itself. So whether that ultimately becomes that, but it's it's a real nod to the whole region. And there's these roads all the way around here. They're packed with cars. I'm sure all the restaurants are full and all the accommodations full. So it's a good initiative for the local community, and we're happy to play our part.
Just go back briefly. You talked, obviously, I was thinking before about like the amazing success Street Bosses had as an American bred sire in Australia. And look, they're probably not as common as maybe 10, 15 ago. 15 years ago, is there a sense now, you spoke about sovereignty before, is there a sense now that there's an opportunity there? Yeah, obviously the tremendous success he's had, quite that was a long time coming, but in terms of, it takes a long time for sort of these things to come through. Is there a sense there that there's an opportunity there now for Darley to look back to that part? Because we do see obviously a lot of European horses, but where's the American sort of enthusiasm at?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're seeing a lot of pedigrees and certainly a lot of high-priced colts and well-performed racehorses in Australia out of American mares. Not to mention that Street Cry was an amazing influence, More Than Ready was an amazing influence. And I think if you think of horses that we've stood like Hardspun, Bernardini, Street Sense, they did great jobs here, like really good. They well and truly held up their end of the bargain. So I think it's an area that we've probably let slip a little bit. Very keen to reintroduce some American horses into our bloodlines. We've got a lot of sons and daughters of Exceed, Dubawi line, Street Cry line, Lonhro line. So we do need a bit of diversity, and we might be able to get that from America. So as I said, a horse like Sovereignty is very interesting. We certainly looked at a horse like Nyquist a couple of years ago, but he got sick and couldn't shuttle. Yeah. And he's been an amazing horse in America. Yeah. So very open-minded to what's happening in America. If we can do something at some stage, we'll certainly bring American shovels down.
And on the track, it's been a sensational last 12 months, and obviously it was a transition to the public training model and all that sort of stuff, and it obviously worked out spectacularly well in terms of results that you have. Looking forward now, is that sense, I guess, those 3-year-olds last year had an amazing year. Is there a sense for you that, that there is that same sort of depth of talent sort of coming through for the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
I don't know. I suppose we're crossing everything and hoping. Yeah. The 2-year-old crop from last year doesn't feel as strong. Yeah. Unfortunately, Medicinal's going to miss the spring. I think she has a very good filly. She's going to miss the spring with a little bit of lameness. She's fine, but she'll be there for the autumn. But, we had Tentyrus coming back from injury and hoping to get him back, and he did. We had Bivok coming back as a Group 2 winner, and he won 2 Group 1, so we probably weren't expecting that. Green Spaces was a Geelong winner, I think, at this stage last year. Observer got beaten on a Wednesday in a benchmark 64 first up, went on to win 2 Group 1s. I mentioned Green Spaces. So I'm not sure Attica had even raced, and if he had, he'd won in the bush. So it's funny how things turn quickly. So we're crossing everything, hoping there's something there. Obviously, the older horses we're very happy with. I think Ferrocles has come back great. Green Spaces has come back great. Today will probably be a bit sharp for him. Obviously will be. But very happy with Tempted, etc. So we've got nice older horses. Not sure where the 3-year-olds sit, but there's some nice gayouts there and a few things. So hopefully one bobs up, and I think we've got a really nice 2-year-old group. So time will tell, but hopeful.
And off the back of that, we you spent a little bit of time chatting with John Messara on Sunday at the parade in Arrowfield. Always good to talk to John, isn't it, Tim? He does have so much understanding and experience. He's been at this breeding game for a very long time. He's had a few ups and downs of late, but he's got a great perspective about where things sit, doesn't he?
Definitely, and as referred to, Van Dijk being ruled out for the season, and Morris never in doubt that he wasn't going to get there, but just a few hiccups in quarantine, and as I say in the interview, probably proves that the quarantine system does work, and that's why you have it. And so well done to those guys for picking it up in Victorian quarantine, and all's well ahead of the season now for Morris.
Yeah, obviously it's a really big weekend for Arrowfield with the Winter Autumn Glow as well. But yeah, you had a good chat with John about sort of where things sit at the moment for Arrowfield and their new stallion lead artist, and where things are going to go forward.
Watching the parade, so that lead artist, I know a stallion you've got a great deal of confidence and belief in, but he certainly, to my eye, paraded very well there.
Oh, he's a stunner. He's a physical stunner. We didn't acquire the southern rights on the basis of his physical characteristics. It was on the depth of his pedigree and the prepotency of his pedigree. And now that we've got him here and looking at him close by, he's a magnificent individual. He's as nice a looking horse as we've got. So I'm very, very excited about him. He's got a chock-a-block full book, so which shows you the response other people have had. But let me tell you something. There are 50 mares in that book that are either ours or in partnership with us. That's the level of confidence I've got in his future.
This weekend at the Hunt Parades, some of the group that we've been staying with, they were trying to get a mare who's thrown a group winner into lead artist this year, and at the moment on the waiting list or no go. That's how popular
he's full as anything. So we're very excited about the response we've had. We're very excited about the horse. I tauntingly said to people that I know very well, he gives me the feeling of being the next Dane Hill, and I said it in a sort of jocular manner, but with time and further analysis, I think there's potential in that happening. I think he could be an exceptional stallion, given the prepotency of his sire, the prepotency of the sire of the dam, the family he comes from, and his performance. I just think he's got everything you look for in a sire for me.
Not everything goes to plan with horses, and as we've spoken over the last week or so, Van Dyke's not here, and Morris is here, but hasn't been without its challenges the last few weeks.
You couldn't believe that those things have happened when we're not really in control of things. They've happened during the quarantining in Victoria, and it's been a very frustrating time, as you and I have talked about. Morris was found to have a tick in quarantine. Subsequently, additional couple of ticks were found. And, of course, that meant that he had to stay in. They had to test the blood a couple of times, etc. There was no consequential impact of the tick, but nevertheless, precautions call it for a delay in the horse getting out. So he got out 10 days or so after quarantine had ended, and which meant that he was only here for 2 days before today's parade, 3 days or something. As for Van Dyke, we are still, mystified by what happened to him in quarantine. He was found in his box one day to be lame and to have a infected tendon in a lower hind leg around the fetlock. And once the tendon gets infected, you can't play around. So they attack the infection, and the lameness is gone now. But obviously the tendon's been affected, and that calls for rehabilitation and time. And so the veterinary advice was that it's going to be 3 months before he's back to square one, and to leave him alone and not put the pressure on his hind legs through a breeding season with 100+ mares,
Just back on Morris, the tick issue, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that ticks emanated from Japan, it seems.
I can't understand how they can get out of Japan at their quarantine side and then come here at our quarantine side and not be sprayed. So it seems that whatever spray was used was probably inconsequential for those ticks, and they remain there. It's something that should probably never have happened, but it did happen, and these things can happen. But they happened to us twice in the one season, and in quarantine. So it's been very disappointing, and it's knocked our season around a bit, and our clients are as well.
Yeah, good chat with John there, Tim, and interesting time in the breeding industry. It's exciting time. People are still making choices. There were still deals being done. I know that there was at the place we were staying at, there was a deal being done for a lead artist nom on Sunday morning over breakfast. So, it's people think, we get your breeding plans done early or whatever. But a lot of the smaller breeders in particular, they do like to see the horse. The woman you mentioned before from Forbes we were talking to, she said she'd only literally done the deal and rang Tom Fantry from Coolmore as the horse after the horse had paraded, like to lock that in for
Delacroix.
that was for Delacroix. Yeah. That was for Delacroix. So I'm saying that the deals aren't always done like ahead of they are important in this regard. The Stallion Parades for selling off the last few dollars, which are important for all stallions, aren't they?
Well, Pullum's entry is very persuasive. So to say no to him for months is a good effort, but seeing the horse got her over the line.
Yeah. And it is interesting. It does make a difference when you see it and you can visualise what the horse is going to look like and you visualise what your mare's going to look like. The following segment is brought to you by Inglis. The catalogue for the 2026 Inglis Ready To Race sale is now available online. And Inglis believes it's the best credentialed group of horses ever assembled for a 2-year-old sale in Australasia. With 321 lots, a record, leading sire power and recent graduates including Group 1 winners Tronbelt, Libertad and Natoya, the sale has real momentum. Breeze-ups take place across Australia and New Zealand in late September before the sale in Sydney this October, just 2 days before the Everest. View the catalogue today at inglis.com.au. Finally, Tim, in the wagering world, and never a dull moment there. Obviously, the last few weeks have been full of wagering news. It's annual results or annual reports time this week. So I've been on 3 different calls, PointsBet, Tabcorp and Better today, looking sort of, how they performed in the last year. The news out of Tabcorp is always closely monitored. Basically, revenue the same, profitability up, which is indication of a company that's probably cut some costs out, made some key changes, and it's probably heading towards some stronger results next year. And really interesting time for Tabcorp. I think I've mentioned today in my wagering newsletter, but racing has dropped from 85% 3 years ago to 78% of their business now. Sport has obviously grown, but the key dragger on racing has been the tote. And obviously we know now that the national tote is now a matter of weeks away probably. It's just waiting on final approval from Liquor and Gaming New South Wales. Once that gets over the line, they'll be pretty keen to launch. And there's rumours in the industry, and I've got to be careful about this because last time I reported that a possible launch date for national tote, it was taken as gospel. I'm hearing late September or around about that sort of AFL Grand Final weekend is probably where they're looking at possibly launching if they can. They may do a soft launch during the week and make that work, but there's still a few things to work out. But it'll definitely be up and going. It'll be fascinating to see what happens because this national tote, as much as important from a symbolic level, I guess, Tim, of uniting the totes and making Australia feel more united, it's going to be the proof will be in the pudding. And if people don't see better odds and they don't see the advantages of it, they're not going to invest into tote. And investment in the tote has been going down 5 to 6% every year for the past probably 5 or 10 years. So a really interesting time in that regard. Tim, I mean, what are your thoughts around national tote? I mean, do you feel like you've spoken about it a bit before, but do you feel like the hype, the results will match the hype?
I'm not sure about that. I'm sure the tab marketing teams will get right behind it. And there might be in-venue promos and all these different things, but it probably depends on how willing their corporate competitors are to let them have a free run at it, or whether the other corporates come up with a different, tote plus percentage that's more attractive. And again, most people bet if they've got money in their account, that's where they bet. They're unlikely to. Most people have 2 or 3 accounts perhaps, but not all of them are funded. And where they've got money is where they'll bet. And I guess perhaps I say the upside will be in the exotics. Perhaps if people see that quaddies and trifectas and first fours, especially on the out wide meetings, forgetting whirlpool meetings and things like that. The out wide meetings where there's $300 in the Quinella pool or the quaddie pool or something, doesn't incentivise you to bet because those are sort of more jackpot products, aren't they? So that's probably where they'll see the upside. But the win place betting, I'm just not sure that'll change a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I think I'll
the
go
rank
back.
And file punter.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'll go back to I wrote an article a few months ago about the impact of whirlpool, and then I guess Australian punters. I think the majority of Australian punters see whirlpool as a negative in terms of price. And that's because favourites tend to win more and people tend to like the broader whirlpool sense. And we saw that with Autumn Glow on the weekend. I think she was $1.40 $1.40 on the tote and $1.80 on the book. So that's a massive difference, Tim. Like, I don't think people actually realise what a big difference that price is, So I think there's probably some perception issues there which they probably need to deal with. But I do agree with you that those big those big exotics, particularly quaddie. I think quaddie is one of the greatest assets Australian racing has. it has become part of the vernacular and people love it. And if you can suddenly start developing stronger narrative around that, bigger dividends, go. All those things, that I think it'll play well into that. And then there's always a question about whether the takeout rate changes or not. I don't think it will in the short term, but it might be something that we're able to pull in the long term. Of course, all that's wrapped up around a retail strategy too, Tim. You talked before about people not changing habits, but having seen, and I don't spend too much time in a retail environment for Tab anymore. You tend to watch races from home or on the phone. But seeing the cash activity in the Scone TAB in the weekend, Tim, was certainly eye-opening for me, that people are still betting in cash and often getting paid out in cash.
Just on the takeout rates, Tabcorp could actually make a difference without changing the official takeout rate, and that would be 5 cent dividends and stopping the rounding down from 10 cent rounding down if it's meant to be, say, $1.99 and it goes down to $1.90. That's just, it is borderline theft, really. So that they could give something back to the punters that way without actually changing their takeout rates or percentages. So that's one step. And again, I haven't heard whether they've even considered it or knocked it on the head, but from a punter's perspective and the industry perspective, I'd like to see that happen.
Yes, and for our lawyers, I'll say that's a colloquial term of theft, not a criminal definition of theft. But I do understand where you're coming from around that stuff. But it will be interesting because the whole model is based around creating this hype around the tab product, the retail product, the racing product, which is all part of this. It's a fascinating time, and really probably when McLaughlin took over 2 years ago, they were the three aspects of the business which were really struggling, and he's really focused on them to try to turn them around. Whether it's the tide that's turned against them or whether it's just because they've become less attractive products, we'll see in time. But really fascinating. And beyond all that, we've got the impact of the unknown impact of the federal government changes in wagering laws around generosities and advertising. Aaron Morrison spoke to him last week from Racing Victoria, and a story last Friday sort of talking about them trying to work out exactly where it fits. He thinks maybe 5 to 10% of turnover, but who knows? Like it's hard to tell because racing has it carved out, but promotion through other vehicles are different. There's all sorts of ways this could sort of fall. So there's that. There's PointsBet raised it, and also definitely a PointsBet raised it this week. Andrew Catterall raised the prospect that which is the I guess the talking point for the gambling industry is around people being pushed to offshore, particularly around like BetStop and what that looks like. There's talk about whether the BetStop measures they put in, which is not to give people basically you can't offer incentives to people, I think, for 14 days or 28 days after they come back off BetStop. In theory, that works. But as several people have pointed out to me and other people on social media, what it actually does is discourage people from joining BetStop in the first place, because they know when they get back off it again, they're going to have a black mark against their name and they're not going to get the incentives because they're worried about. So therefore, you just disincentive people who probably should be joining BetStop and seeking help from doing that. So, look, I think this policy and stuff's got a long way to work out. I can understand where that's. If I was a racing executive or even a wagering executives, it'd be almost impossible to work out what impact this will make, Tim. Like what it'll do. I think they probably would be able to model it better on sport. They'll be able to model it on marketing. What was interesting to see. The BetR figures today, they've got a much lower generosity figure, and their turnover through bonus bets is only 9%. Of course, Aaron Morrison has said it's roughly 30% impact. Now, that's some of that sort of a 3 times multiplier effect of people reinvesting money that they've won through bonus bets, etc., and through that. So it's just such a complicated system, Tim. I mean, I've been writing about wagering for a fair while now, probably 10 years in some capacity, and certainly 4 or 5 years in a dedicated capacity. I'm getting my head around it and make it work. And you've got a good idea of this stuff too, Tim. You operate, you don't mind a bet, but you're obviously quite educated in this space and how it works. Trying to get a hold on how this is going to pan out. It's hard work, isn't it?
Look, people that have got gambling problems, and they should be protected. But those that want to bet will find a way. It's a number of people who probably don't have a problem, but are put off for one way or the other, whether it is they were, their $100 a week punter and like their free bets or money back second and third. It's how many of those that fall by the wayside it's going to hurt turnover. And forecasting that, I need someone smarter than me to try and even attempt to model that. So I think I prefer to wait until it's in action and we see the legislation take effect, and 6 months after that, try and get a handle on actually what's occurred.
Yeah, you certainly need someone smarter than some of the bozos in Parliament that have thought they've got to handle all this in the last few weeks. Interesting times. And across that, you also got the fact that you shared a story today. Key regulators are actually losing resources. Austrac are going to cut in the resources they've got in terms of financial crimes and thing. ACMA, the assumption was they would get additional resources to do the 10 times extra work they need to do. I'm being told from within the wagering industry, they don't believe that's the case. So how are ACMA going to handle this? So suddenly it's like, it's your problem. Now you enforce it. We've done the laws, you enforce it. We're not going to give you the extra resources to do it. So I think it's so much to play in this space. But anyway, looking for your next opportunity in racing, breeding or wagering, or searching for the right person to join your team? The Straight Jobs is the industry's dedicated careers platform, connecting employers with talented professionals right across the thoroughbred sector. For the latest opportunities or industry careers, go to jobs.thestraight.com.au. Ken, before we head off for the weekend, or the week, sorry, not quite the weekend yet, we've still got a bit to go. Anything else you'd sort of want to put on the agenda?
Just a bit of a promo for Magic Millions Digital, which is thanks Inglis for the sponsorship. The 10% share in Private Eye is going to go up. The sale will be live on Friday, and I believe, I haven't got all the details yet, close on Monday. So there'll be a 10% share. Yes, he's a 9-year-old, but he ran second in the PB Lawrence last start. He's just been an old marvel for proven thoroughbreds and Joe Pride. So there's 10% share in him available for anyone that wants sort of a thrill immediately. I think he's running in a race Saturday week somewhere in Sydney or Melbourne. And I think Godolphin are selling a few tried horses through Magic Millions as well. And there's always, you see across the country every week, there's a Godolphin, ex-Godolphin horse winning decent races. I think I saw Paul Snowden have one during the week as well. So there's always a bargain to be had from Godolphin.
Yeah. And it's obviously a busy time of year. We're expecting the Magic Millions breeze up sale catalogue to come out soon. NZB, probably not far away. We had the Inglis Ready To Race catalogue, as I mentioned before, in our live read come out this week. And that aspect of the market's really interesting as well. You've got an article up there on how much more the value of the yearlings are this year compared to previous years that have been pinhooked into that sale, Tim. So there's plenty of discussion in that area too, isn't it? Worthwhile having a look at that article because it really does highlight the opportunity in that market, and probably some high quality graduates, including Tronbolt this year, have really got people excited about, haven't they?
I think vendors or traders, sort of pinhookers, that saw the opportunity there off the back of last year's success, but it also, not every horse makes money. And it is an expensive process to get them educated and breeze up, and they've got to pass vet. So there's 321 lots catalogues, a lot of horses to sell, and we won't know until NZB and Magic Millions release their catalogues exactly how many horses are being offered this year across the board and compared to last year to sort of get a real guide. But there will be opportunities there. There will be some good horses come out of that sale. And given there's so many horses catalogued, there'd probably be a bargain, and the vendors or traders and owners can't keep them all.
Last one, Tim. Any thoughts on the Memsie this weekend? It's an interesting race, Group 1 race, of course. We had Autumn Blow dominant this time, at odds on, as you spoke about before, but this week we've got a really open market. Jimmy Star favourite at the moment. A fair bit of money for Autumn Boy since J-Mac jumped on. He's 12s into 8s since James McDonald was confirmed on him. Any thoughts about what to expect out of the race and what to watch for it?
Well, I'm a big fan of Autumn Boy, whether Caulfield, just that distance sort of suits him with goals late. I think he's going to the Cox Plate. I heard this week's going to be the target. Is Baywatter's in the race, I think. I'm just trying to bring up the field. Yeah. So whether go forward, 1400, be hard to run down if Caulfield plays reasonably fairly or like it normally does. I think he might run a big race as well.
Yeah, it'd be a fascinating race to see happen. I'll tell you what, the punters who want to line up for Jimmy Star as favourite again are more braver than I am, because I think I'll wait for Jimmy to get to one in front of his name before I go knocking on that door again. But yeah, it is a very strong race. It's about the depth of it. You've got Jimmy Star, Cosmic Crusader, Baywatch, Treasure of the Moment, Autumn Boy, Angel Capital, Mr. Brightside, Tom Kitten, Birdman, and that's before you get to sort of the outsiders, which are Planet Red, Sabage, and Buckaroo. So plenty of Group 1 quality in that race. It's good to see good racing back. We've got good racing in Sydney as well this week. It's a time of year when we get excited about racing, and we looking forward to talking about it more and more over the next few weeks. Thanks for joining us on Straight Talk, brought to you by our fabulous sponsors, Darley and, of course, Inglis. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you have feedback or a topic, send us an email at bren@thestraight.com.au. We'll talk to you again next week.